Hello and welcome back to the caves, everybody. Welcome back to Deep Rock Galactic, where today we're going to be talking about the new game, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, or what will become a new game. I have been playing the demo quite a bit recently. I think I've put in about 25 to 30 hours into it so far, which has been very, very fun. So, very first question, what is Deep Rock Galactic Survivor? Deep Rock Galactic Survivor so far is a solo game where you are playing as one of four dwarfs in a top-down view, similar to other Survivor games like Vampire Survivors, as well as this is a roguelite game, so when you die, you get sent all the way back and you have starting gear. Something along the lines of, say, Hades or Binding of Isaac. This is also an auto shooter game, so the guns will fire as soon as you get close to an enemy, which is pretty interesting. I know some people were kind of disappointed by that and wanted to manually aim, and maybe manually aimed guns will be added in the future. We'll have to wait and see. Currently, there is only one of the dwarfs that you can play as, and that is Scout, at least for the demo. This was also the same thing for the beta a couple months back when I got early access to it. Interestingly enough, though, there is multiple subclasses within your dwarf's class. As of right now, there is currently only two subclasses that you can pick from with Scout, either Recon Scout or Classic Scout. Classic Scout is the very first Scout that you have unlocked, and this is more the Classic Scout from Deep Rock Galactic, where you have some extra passives as well as this dictates your starting weapon. So with Classic Scout, you start out with the good old GK2 assault rifle. Very standard assault rifle, but also very consistent and a very good gun in this game. We're going to be talking about the weapons here in a little bit because I do have a tier list made up for these. Because of course, but this also comes with a couple passives. This comes with 5% dodge chance, so Scout just has a 5% chance of when you would take damage, you just don't take damage, which is pretty nice. And you also get 20% extra movement speed with Classic Scout. So this is run and gun fast like how you would in Deep Rock with Scout, which is pretty good. Recon Scout is slightly different, where you have a different starting weapon and you also have different abilities. You start out with the Zukovs in this class, as well as then you get an increased chance to dodge, and anytime that you do dodge, it actually triggers a second effect where you'll get extra move speed from this, which makes it so this class is actually pretty good at getting out of really bad situations. So the general plan for Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is pick a mission, whatever mission type you'd like. So far there is only one cave that is in the game, but we have seen that there is up to 3, so we're going to get multiples of them, as well as then you pick your hazard difficulty, just like you do in Deep Rock. Right now there's only up to hazard 3, and you do have to unlock these one at a time, so you'll start out as hazard 1, then you'll go to hazard 2, then you'll go to hazard 3. Once that is established, you pick your dwarf, you pick your class, or your subclass with the dwarf, and then you just get dropped in. On top of this, there is also things like upgrades that you can get, which currently only apply to Scout. I'm not sure if you're going to have to get multiple of these to apply to every class, or if they're just going to be a general overall buff to every class. After that, you drop into the mission, and you are sent out to go and fight the bugs. Now, that isn't your only objective, but it is a pretty good way of getting experience. Every time you kill a bug, they will drop experience. If they're a lesser bug, they're just going to drop little amounts of XP, and you can pick this up off the ground. Then if you kill a bigger bug, something with an actual health bar, you kill that and it will pop, and it usually will come with this big cube, something similar to the error cube in actual Deep Rock, or sometimes up to 3 of these. You pick these up, they're bigger chunks of XP, and you can level your dwarf up. You'll see a bar at the bottom of your screen when you're fighting enemies. Once this reaches max, you will level up and carry over to the next level. Every time you level up, you will get to pick your upgrades. Upgrades are completely random in terms of what they do, as well as in terms of the rarity, because upgrades can come in multiple rarities. You start out with very common things, then you can move up to the rare, then the epic, and then the legendary upgrades, which are generally the best. These upgrades can go for your dwarf in general, so this could be increased reload speed to all medium-sized weapons, this could be increased crit chance for all of your weapons, or this could be increased overall health for your dwarf. These ones are pretty nice to have and definitely stack up more towards the later end of the game. You also have weapon upgrades, and weapon upgrades can also vary heavily. These can be non-specific weapon upgrades, where once again you might just get medium weapons that are stronger, or something like fire weapons get a damage buff. This could also be direct buffs to the weapon, where it might have extra reload speed or extra damage. Once you've picked whatever upgrade you get, then you can keep going on and getting more upgrades. You're going to be wanting to run around in this game pretty often, which is something I really enjoy, and something that I heard a lot of other Survivor games really don't really incentivize you to do. They tend to just be stand in the middle of the map and kill everything, or become overpowered to where nothing can get next to you. Now, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor can turn into that, especially if you allow it to turn into that, but it doesn't really start out that way, and it heavily incentivizes you to run around and get things. One thing that is really cool about this game that's over other Survivor games is that you can dig your way through any sort of surface that you see, so long as you're not actually going off of the map. So as long as you're in the map, you can dig right through walls, meaning that you can use walls very effectively to separate enemies from you. You can also go into these walls because that's where the majority of your good loot is going to be. There is still the classic loot bugs that you're going to find around, and in this game you can't actually shoot them, so you do have to get up close and pickaxe them to death. Poor little guys, but hey, they are full of goodies. Then you will be trying to grab other materials across the map. These range from our standard materials that we see in Deep Rock, from gold, nitra, to rare materials, and red sugar. Red sugar, once again, is health, so that's always a good thing to get, and it can be very important to remember where the red sugar was, because you don't regenerate health very quickly in this game, and as of right now, there is no like vampire ability to steal health from other bugs. More common materials such as gold and nitra can be used for upgrades, as well as getting more health in between stages, and gold can also be used to re-roll the different upgrades that you get, and currently with rare materials, you can only use them to buy more upgrades for your dwarf overall, so you can get more movement speed, mining speed, whatever it might be that's going to give passives to everybody, presumably. There is also overclock mechanics that have been added to this. This wasn't in the original beta, but it is in the demo currently. So once you've gotten a weapon leveled up to level 12, then overclocks become available on the next time that you go through a mission. This can be really important, as well as other things unlock as you level up and challenges get completed, so you can get other things that unlock. There is also artifacts that are in the game that you get once per stage. These are sent in from drop pods, and these can give you a huge advantage. Some of these are pretty basic, like some of the scanners, where if you mine through rock, there's a % chance that you might get some extra XP, or you might get some extra nitra or some extra gold. All of those are pretty good. And then more artifacts that you unlock along the way. Things like gold-tipped bullets to give you more damage for every gold that you get, and nitrogenic powder to where every piece of nitra that you have on your person makes so you get extra crit chance. So it kind of becomes this balancing act of, do you want to spend your gold in nitra, or do you want to hoard it so that you can get more advantages with your items? Because there is only a set limit of gold and nitra that you can get throughout the entire stage, and you want to be spending it as wisely as possible. On top of that, there is other artifacts like the BLT sandwich, which just gives you extra health and health regen, so it's always going to be a good thing unless they add some sort of mechanic in this game where having low health is an advantage. But I think it's pretty funny and pretty creative that they've added some things that have been kind of mentioned in Deep Rock into this game, and I think it works really well in an artifact system like this. Unlocking more artifacts feels very satisfying because it lets you experiment more, and it makes you come up with some interesting strategies. There is one that's called like Frostburn in this, where if you're using fire weapons, they also count as cryo weapons that slow enemies down, which is really cool. This kind of rounds back to overclocks for the weapons too. You can actually have 3 overclocks in every single weapon in this game if you'd like. They come at level 6, 12, and 18, so every 6 levels you get to pick one of these, and currently it's just you pick one or the other, with a few exceptions where certain weapons only have a final option, so you only get to pick that one. This is always a balanced overclock followed by another balanced overclock followed by an unstable overclock, which I hope kind of gets changed in the future. I hope we get options to get clean overclocks in this as well. I think that would be really interesting, as well as more overclocks in general, but I think those would be really easy to add compared to adding in like completely new weapons, so this is perfectly fine, and there is a lot of stuff in this game already. And some of these overclocks can actually be super useful on weapons. You can stack things like piercing rounds, change your damage type from regular rounds to electricity rounds. You could have knockback rounds on your shots. You can condense all of your shots into something really big and damaging, which is pretty cool. And that kind of brings me to the weapons of Deep Rock. And I have my tier list here, and we're going to rank all of them that we have in this game right now. So first up, we've got the classic GK2. This is like the standard assault rifle that you get, and it is extremely consistent in this game. It is really, really solid and probably one of the best guns in this game, surprisingly. Which, I mean, the GK2 in regular Deep Rock is quite good now, but it wasn't always the best for quite a while. This one is very solid. It feels consistent. Upgrades feels consistent. Its overclocks are really good. It actually has a really cool unstable overclock where even if you get really bad rolls on everything else, you can just spec into this one to where it just gets better and all of your other gear gets worse. So even if you just high roll on the GK2 or get decent rolls on that and then low rolls on everything else, who cares? I can just take my assault rifle. GK2 is going solidly into our A tier. It is a fantastic gun in this. Then we've got the Zhukovs, another gun that you can start out with, which is kind of interesting. This gun fires a little bit strange. It fires in front of you, behind you, and to the left and right of you, and it just keeps firing. It has limited range, it doesn't do that much damage, it is really awkward to use. It does have a really cool unstable overclock, but the regular Zukavs I would probably put into C tier. Once you get the unstable overclock, I would move it up a tier or two, because then it is pretty good where it just becomes a bullet sprinkler and firing rounds all around you, which is really cool. And then we've got the M1000 Classic, good old sniper rifle. This one already has piercing rounds on it, so just like in regular Deep Rock, this gun is pretty useful. Does really high damage, has very long range, somewhat slow rate of fire. It does have some interesting overclocks though. You can just set the bullets on fire if you want, have knockback bullets on it, or you can get the big old thick boy overclock for its final one and condense all the bullets into one giant round and do massive chunk damage at the cost of reload speed. M1000 Classic is also going like right up into A tier. It is a very consistent weapon and a very strong weapon on basically everything that I've found. Then we've got the Drak, another very consistent weapon. The Drak is actually really good. Drak does function a little bit differently in this. It's basically like it has bouncy rounds all the time, where those will fire out constantly and just bounce the plasma around. All plasma actually bounces in this, so that can make other weapons pretty good and pretty useful too. In the original beta, we had two other weapons that counted as plasma weapons. The Loki Smart Rifle, weirdly enough, that fired out in like an octagon or a hexagon around your dwarf, and the EPC, which just fired out one big old blob that bounced around. Drak, pretty consistent. You can put fire on it, you can slow things down. It's got good overclocks. I would say it's another very solid A tier. It is a very good and very consistent weapon. Then we've got our Bolt Shark, which the Bolt Shark actually has multiple arrows in it already that you can fire. So it can do acid damage, it can have electricity damage on it, I believe, and then you can get overclocks like fire and ice arrows on this. Basically, this is an everything type of weapon. It just uses all the elements. So if you're going with an elemental build, it can be pretty cool. It is a little bit finicky. It has a little bit of a strange sound effect, and sometimes I just lose like sight of the arrows entirely. I think that's just a Mia problem though. And the Bolt Shark I don't find as consistent as something like the M1000, even though they fill a similar role. So I think the Bolt Shark will go up into B tier. Solid option, but a little bit wonky. Then we've got the jury-rigged boomstick. The boomstick is also pretty unique in this, where it just fires out multiple pellets in a line that just knock back everything. It has knockback on it base, which in a game like this is actually super useful, because you don't want things getting too close to you. Does really high damage, and it has some really cool overclocks too. The boomstick is very consistent as well. I'd put that one right up into A tier. Then we've got the Cryonade, and believe it or not, the Cryonade is probably the most busted weapon in this game. It is surprisingly good, because not only does it work as just a regular Cryonade to where it deals damage and slows enemies down, which is already really good, and makes it so even if you get this into the late game, you don't even need to put levels into it. It's always going to be a good option. But on top of that, it actually gets some other crazy overclocks, where it can have cluster bombs where it throws out 3 of these that all explode around, which make it kind of hard to see if you have high enough reload speed and you're just chucking these all around you. It also can have like black holes on it to where it just sucks everything in. So you're dealing high damage, you're throwing these out everywhere, you're just covering an entire area where every enemy is slowed in it and you can't really see, which is only kind of a problem if there's spinning enemies. And it's so strong. The slowdown on it is fantastic. Yeah, this thing is like the most busted weapon in this game, and it's going right up into S tier. It is like probably the best weapon in the beta currently. And then we've got the Volcanic Sweeper. You throw out the boomerang and it comes right back to you. One thing that is really cool about the boomerang is that once you throw it, it can actually go through any sort of wall. So you can throw this beyond walls, hit enemies, and come right back. This deals electricity damage every time you do it, and it's got some interesting overclocks where it can like grab XP and bring it back to you. An all around decent weapon, but I'd probably put that into the B tier. It's a little bit lacking compared to some weapons, but it's still a pretty decent weapon. It also counts as a throwable, which is useful because you can take this and the Cryonade and then sometimes just get rolls of extra throw damage or extra throw whatever, and that's pretty nice. It also counts as an electricity weapon, so you can stack electricity on like this and the crossbow and the GK2 because you can put electricity on that as well. And then for the new weapons, we have 3 new weapons as of right now in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. The first 2 are drones. You get an electricity drone and a cryo drone. The electricity drone, I would say, is a little bit better. The electricity drone goes around you, it goes out and it zaps things. This can zap beyond walls, it can hit enemies, and it does pretty consistent damage, but not as much as a dedicated weapon firing directly at them, something like the GK2 with electricity rounds in it. Usually, this heavily depends on what mods and stuff you get, because you might get a ton for it and it might just become crazy because you high rolled everything on it, and that's kind of how a lot of these roguelike games go, where sometimes you can just get a disgusting build that carries you through everything. These ones go around, zap stuff. They're pretty good. They slow things down. They're not bad, but I don't really care for them too much. They would also probably go into the C tier, similar to the Zukovs. And I would actually probably put the boomerang there too, now that I'm thinking about it. Sorry, Meant to put it in C tier, but B tier, yeah, it could go either way. Whichever one. If you find the XP grabbing useful, B tier then. Our second drone is the Cryo Drone, which this one goes around you in a circle at a set distance, and it hits enemies, and it deals cryo damage, so it slows them down. And this one I find to be really overclock reliant, where you need to get the ones that make it so they actively seek out enemies and attack them, and you want more drones. The more drones you got, the better this is. So if you got a bunch of them, it can be really good, but I find them to be the least reliable weapon out of anything in Deep Rock, and I don't like speccing into them just for that. So these ones would definitely go into my D tier, and I think they're the only thing that would be, at least currently, in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. And then our final gun, which I think is a lot more interesting and something that could totally fit in regular Deep Rock. This is the Thor, or the Thor, however you want to say this, since there's a space in it, similar to the Loki or the Lock 1. Bug Taser. This one is really cool. I would really like to see this in Deep Rock. It zaps to enemies and arcs across them, dealing damage to everything. This can also go through walls, so you can just keep zapping things, and it can be pretty useful if you're also like chucking grenades out with them. A little bit reliant on mods, and this one seems to be very rare for me. I never really got it offered that much compared to other weapons. I believe that's because certain weapons in this game are going to be counted as like neutral weapons, where they count for everybody. So they may not be prioritized as much compared to the class-specific weapons, but they will probably go to everything. That is a complete speculation, complete conjecture, so don't quote me on that. I have no inside evidence of this. But the Thor gun is pretty cool, and once you put some overclocks into it and some upgrades into it, it is really cool to see this just zap out and hit multiple enemies. That one I would put right into the B tier. It is good when I've tried it, but I don't get offered it that much, so that's why I'd put it there, just because, like, the inconsistency of it. I am very, very excited for this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to sink a lot of hours into it. I'm going to be streaming it quite a bit, too, and I'm sure we can find some crazy builds, some crazy things to try out and see what we can get done with this, as well as plenty of challenge runs or whatever it might be. This game seems like it's going to have a ton of replayability. I'm hoping that it's fairly cheap so that people can pick it up without too much trouble either. Most of these Survivor type games generally are pretty cheap. Something like Vampire Survivors is like $2 most of the time on Steam, so I don't know if it'll be that cheap on release, but it would be cool to see this like $20 or less. So tell me your thoughts on Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. If you haven't tried it, I would highly recommend you try it. The demo is completely free on Steam. You can download it, and most people, like myself, have gotten about 15 to 30 hours out of it, which is a lot for a demo, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys have a great day. Remember to rock and stone, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye!